Are you like me and enjoyed playing characters in video games that could transform into another form per se? I remember loving to play as a druid in Diablo 2 when I was a kid, and just all the different forms you could transform into, and just becoming this huge monster. It was super cool. Same goes for World of Warcraft. All the different forms that could facilitate so many different circumstances that you were in. If you wanted to play a tanky character, if you wanted to sneak around like a tiger, you had that option. Something maybe that's a little more relevant to this video is turning into a werewolf like you could in the DLC for Skyrim or something like that. Just the ability to be a human once and then be this awesome beast another was something that really appealed to me in those games. I'm not totally sure I know what it is about these aspects that, interested me so much, but there's something very alluring about them and just kind of having kind of this unknown man once and transform into this giant monster in that next. Well, when Artisan Guild released their September collection of a bunch of Lycan witch hunters, it immediately piqued my interest and had me thinking of what D&D character I could make utilizing these miniatures. If you are very familiar with D&D, then you wouldn't be surprised to find that I fell upon the Blood Hunter class, which is kind of a official homebrew class developed by Matt Mercer. You may have heard of that guy. But one of the aspects of the Blood Hunter is you can become this Lycan warrior. So you kind of retain some of your human aspects and some of your humanity per se, while also getting to be a badass werewolf. So when the awesome miniatures came out, I immediately built a Blood Hunter in D&D Beyond and started thinking of how I could paint him and how I could create two miniatures for one character and see how I could connect them. So the stage is set. I have an awesome miniature from Artisan Guild. I have my character created in D&D Beyond. I have utilized some of the kind of the background and lore aspects of a blood hunter in my kind of paint scheme. So what is the big deal about painting two different miniatures that transform? Well, first of all, we have to paint two minis for one character, and we have to make them look interconnected, and in some aspects, even recreate the same paint job that we paint on one on the other. This can introduce a lot of its own challenges in and of itself when we're trying to recreate a paint scheme, because the miniature is supposed to be the same one, but in slightly two different forms. And we have to kind of create cohesion between the two miniatures so that they look interconnected. The kind of second major paint scheme, painting piece between these two miniatures was, of course, the blue cloak. And it's going to kind of be the main technique I want to focus on today and how I created this. This is kind of becoming my go-to method for painting cloth, like cloaks and capes and kind of more flowing pieces like this. And that is utilization of the method stippling. Hello, it's editor Wesley here today. I just wanted to clarify something I kind of talk about here. I refer to this technique as stippling. That may not be entirely the proper term for what I did here. Stippling is more on utilizing like making little dots, not so much as little swipes. I couldn't really find a specific term for the technique I utilize here, but the method that I discuss here for creating the effect still stands and it still works. I just don't think the terminology is quite right, and I just wanted to clarify that. So back to nice lighting, Wes. You may be familiar with this already, but if you're not, stippling is just the process of making a bunch of tiny little swipes with your paintbrush. And what this does is that it kind of creates texture around the edges. It doesn't make such a harsh line, and it helps you kind of build up your highlights much smoother and create a much better blending effect across it. And since cloth is something that is so fluid in movement, we really want to create a very smooth blend here. And so all I do is take my dark color, stipple in a pretty large area where I want my highlight, and then as I continue to build up my highlight, I will make it brighter and brighter every time, and I just stipple a much smaller area, bringing my highlight closer and closer and closer, all the way to the highest edge or the kind of middle point where it's going to be brightest. And this just creates a very smooth blending effect. And if you maybe want the blend to be a little smoother, you can go in with a very thin glaze as well and glaze over it. This can really smooth out your blends as well, and then just maybe do one more layer of highlights. I really enjoy painting my cloth this way, and I think it creates very smooth blends that I'm very happy with, and it's kind of becoming my go-to cloth technique, and I used it heavily on the robes. And so, since I'm recreating this on both miniatures, it's kind of important to understand the technique I'm utilizing to apply it, as well as the color choices I'm making, just because we want them to look as familiar as possible. The cloak on my werewolf is a little bluer than the cloak on my human, but overall I think they look similar enough, and I don't think they look really noticeably different from each other. I think if you looked at them, from the tabletop from where you're standing, they would look almost the same. So I think it turned out really well, and I'm a big fan of utilizing stippling, especially where I want smooth blends and where I have the space to do it, especially like a big flowy cloth piece. A thought that started creeping into my mind as I painted these miniatures is that I overall wasn't that pleased with the paint job, but I was kind of nearing the end of them, and when you're not happy with a paint job, when you're almost done with it, that can be a problem. However, I still had not completed a couple aspects of the miniature that are very important to kind of helping a finished miniature look finished, and that was painting the eyes and painting the base. So I encourage you, if you're painting a miniature and you're not super pleased with it and you have left out some maybe what feel like small aspects of the miniature, I encourage you to paint those before you kind of throw it in the trash or give up on it, because those little things can actually end up being a huge factor in it feeling like a finished miniature. So I wasn't quite done with all the highlights on these guys, but I went ahead and painted the eyes to kind of help my sanity and helping them look more done and just look better in general, because they just had blankness in their faces and it just made them look weird and incomplete. So I went and painted the eyes, and that immediately helped the miniature look more finished, more kind of just better overall, made the scheme feel more complete, and definitely helped my psyche in trying to not just give up on these miniatures before they're all the way done. The base is also a huge part of that. Now, I am not an overtly amazing base painter. I really don't do anything special with them. It's probably one of my weakest points on miniatures are my bases. But simply doing a gray, a brown, whatever matches the material on the base, and then throwing a wash over top, and then even dry brushing if you want to get really crazy, can also really help a miniature feel done. Having a beautiful painted miniature on a base that hasn't been touched honestly makes it look 10 times worse in my opinion. So doing something very simple on your base can really help a miniature look completed. It can take very mediocre paint jobs and make them feel so much better, because the whole thing just looks so cohesive. It looks like it's really living in the environment that this little miniature is captured in. And so I think painting a base before you give up on a miniature is very important, because it can help it look so much better and help it look so much more complete. So I encourage you to paint your bases, use flocking, use little grass tufts, whatever works for you, but just put in a little bit of effort there and it can really step up your miniature 5-10 times above where it's at currently. One last point to kind of make about adding something to your miniature if you feel like it looks incomplete or if you're feeling down about it is adding a simple weathering effect. Something I did on this was just adding some kind of mud looking effect on it. I just took a dark brown, took one of my crappy synthetic brushes, wiped it off like I was going to do a dry brush, and just kind of blotted it like a sponge over the area that I wanted to look muddy. And I think overall this helps add a lot of character to the miniature. It can help it look a lot more living and help it look like it's in the world a lot more. So adding a simple weathering effect like mud, you can even do like dust or something like that if it's like in a desert base. But a simple weathering effect is another one of those things that you can utilize to add that little bit more to your miniature to help it feel more complete and have a little bit more character. So overall, these aren't the most amazing paint jobs in the world. I painted them in a couple hours a piece. I was really focused on my cloth effect and creating a cool blend there, and I think overall I accomplished that. I also was just focused on making sure the miniatures looked like the same person but in two different forms, and I think I accomplished that as well. Kind of utilizing simple techniques and making sure to focus on the cloak, which is the main piece on both miniatures, and making sure it looked as good as possible and making sure it kind of matched as well as I could have. I also utilized the kind of fur to beard match just to try and create some connection between the miniatures, and it also just helps add uniqueness to your werewolf so it doesn't look like any other werewolf. I think overall these were turned out really well, and I think that they are going to make a good addition to any D&D character that I find myself playing here in the near future. I hope you enjoyed this video. I wanted to try something a little different and focus more on kind of my overall theory and approach to painting the miniature and less on a step-by-step guide on how I painted each aspect of the miniature. I wanted to kind of focus more on one technique and element I utilized in the miniature that I felt like was important, the stippling in this case. So if you like this style of the video, let me know. I'm totally down to kind of shift my videos to kind of be more in this mindset. It's a little more fun to kind of explore and discuss my approach to painting the miniature and less the step by step. But if you like the step by step stuff too, let me know. I know that stuff can be really helpful. I've watched that stuff myself and find it really helpful. So, let me know what you kind of liked about this video and what you didn't. Of course, give it a like. It really helps the channel out, helps the video out. If you like it, I really appreciate it. Also, subscribe so you can see all my future videos and when they come out. It also really helps support the channel. And go check out all my other videos too. I've got a pretty large array of different techniques and minis that I've explored so far. So if you like this video, you can check out my others and kind of see what else I've discussed and what type of minis we've painted here. Also, you can check out all my links down in the description. If you want to pick up a physical miniature of this one, like the one I painted here today, you can pick it up in my Etsy shop down below. I sell a whole bunch of D&D and fantasy RPG style miniatures at the Etsy shop from a bunch of different designers that I like to paint my own minis from. So if you are interested in that, check it out. Also, I'll link the STL from Artisan Guild down there. You can pick it up if it's something you want to do as well. I appreciate you watching so much. I appreciate all the views and likes and stuff I've been getting. It's an awesome approach to this. I also stream every Thursday at 9 p.m. Central. So if you want to see all these miniatures when I'm painting them live and discuss with me my techniques and ask me questions about them, you can check out my stream. I'm every Thursday night, 9 p.m. Central. As always, do not forget to elevate your game night.